everybody. Welcome back to English 112. This is for our class for Tuesday, the 13th of April. So at this point, you should have received your paperback from me, paper number 1, and we are in the midst of thinking about paper number 2. And you can see that in the syllabus and other document section above, I've put some suggested paper topics for paper number 2. Now, paper number 2 is not going to be due until the 6th of May, which is a Thursday. And prior to paper number 2 being due, we will have a journal due on all 3 dramas. The first being Oedipus the King, the second being Midsummer Night's Dream, and the last drama, the one that we are beginning today, A Raisin in the Sun. That'll be due on April 22nd, which is a Thursday. And the journal will be very similar to what you did with your short story journal. I'm asking you to devote about a page or so to each of the dramas. And I will respond to content, not grammar or mechanics. And I will evaluate that on our checkmark system. And hopefully some of my comments or some of your thoughts on your journals or both will assist you with your paper. And this particular paper will be very similar to what you did with short story. The difference is that rather than analyzing short story, you will be analyzing one of the dramas. So your paper should be 4 to 5 pages, and it would be in reference to either Oedipus the King or A Midsummer Night's Dream or Raisin in the Sun. And I'll talk a little bit more about the paper topics next class, but you can see if you go to the top section, what I've tried to do is to devote some paper topics to each of the dramas. So paper number 2 is a critical paper. In other words, you should not be consulting outside sources, much like you did with the first paper. However, if you do want to write a research paper, do consult with me and make sure that I can approve the topic. Paper length, again, approximately 4 to 5 pages. Choose any of the topics that I've got listed, or you can write on your own topic, so you can combine and so forth. If you choose to write on your own topic, it makes sense to approve the topic with me beforehand, before you do any serious composing. And the syllabus talks about the paper formatting specifications, which I also would have discussed when I reviewed your first paper about typed and double-spaced and 1-inch margins and numbered pages and so forth. So I developed 3 topics, though there are many more that I could develop for Oedipus the King. The first being examine the importance of family in Sophocles' Oedipus the King. One of the things we talked about in Oedipus the King was that Oedipus had his community as a kind of family. It wasn't just his nuclear family, and he needed to protect both. Of course, this is a topic that would work very nicely as well for a drama like A Raisin in the Sun. Or number 2, analyze the images of vision and blindness in Sophocles' Oedipus the King and discuss how these images relate to the theme. We had talked about Tiresias, the blind prophet who has insight, how ultimately at the end Oedipus blinds himself because his eyes have physically betrayed him. He's been in denial throughout the entire play, but yet he also has insight. And throughout the play, we get references to light and dark and vision and blindness. Or number 3 would be in reference to A Midsummer Night's Dream, to discuss the role of Puck in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Now, you could examine any of the major characters in Midsummer Night's Dream, just like you could examine any of the major characters in, let's say, Oedipus the King. But Puck tends to be an audience favorite. He is the fairy that manipulates all of the action. In fact, we talked about that in many ways. Puck is a kind of stand-in for Shakespeare himself, as this Puck character sort of controls and manipulates the action, much like Shakespeare does. Or number 4, examine the theme of love in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And as we know, we read and watched a comedy, and Shakespearean comedies are based on love and all of the conflicts that can result because of love. But because it's a Shakespearean comedy, we will have a happy resolution. And then I determined a couple of topics for A Raisin in the Sun, which is the play that we're beginning with today, to discuss the significance of the title in Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. And all semester long, we've been talking about the importance of titles, but this title in particular is important. Not only is it hugely symbolic, but A Raisin in the Sun is a line from a Langston Hughes poem about a dream deferred, which I will talk about in a moment, that helped inspire Lorraine Hansberry, the playwright, for writing this play, A Raisin in the Sun. And then lastly, Compare and contrast. Walter and Beneatha in Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. You can compare and contrast any of a number of characters, but considering that these two individuals are siblings and their similarities and their differences, I thought would be very interesting. So as I've discussed with previous plays, we will be watching a performance, but a performance is no substitute for actually reading the play itself. I think you'll find that A Raisin in the Sun, it will move much more quickly than the previous two plays we've read and will be much more accessible. Much of that has to do with the fact that it's a much more contemporary play from 1950s United States, Chicago to be exact. And A Raisin in the Sun is not included in our textbook, but I thought it was an important enough play so that I would assign it as a separate text, as a paperback, but I've also included a link that would allow you to access A Raisin in the Sun if you were not able to buy that particular paperback. And a couple of things I'd like you to consider as you are reading the play and as you are watching the play. We will be watching the play for the next two classes, and then we can actually start talking about the play itself. Think about the importance of names in this play, something that we've talked about with other literary texts, but particularly in this play, A Raisin in the Sun. Names, first, last, nicknames, all of these will be very important and very symbolic. Think about light versus dark, which is something that I asked you to consider with Oedipus the King, but it'll also be important in A Raisin in the Sun. A Raisin in the Sun, when you read the play, you'll see that it begins with a Langston Hughes poem entitled Harlem, with its opening line, "What happens to a dream deferred?" And I would argue that that's one of the major questions of the play, is what happens to these characters now that their dreams have been deferred. Hansberry was 29 years old when she wrote this play, and it was an instant sensation. She was the youngest American, the fifth woman, and the first black playwright to win the Best Play of the Year award from the New York Drama Critics, as you can see from my notes below. Unfortunately, she died quite young of cancer at 34. Now, in the version that we are going to be watching, I was able to find the Sidney Poitier version from 1961 online, and I believe you should be able to access this for free. This is considered to be the definitive version because Lorraine Hansberry actually worked on it herself. The play was originally produced on stage in Broadway, and then it was made into a Hollywood film, and this film is what I would like you to watch, and it was under her direction. So basically, this is the closest we are going to get to the playwright's vision of a film. If for whatever reason you can't access this link because it is a link through Facebook, you are certainly free to watch another version of A Raisin in the Sun. There are multiple versions out there, but I can tell you that the definitive version is 1961 with Sidney Poitier. Again, because Lorraine Hansberry helped to work on that version. And the actors in the film were the actors who actually appeared on stage on Broadway. So, one of the central conflicts in the play is how to spend a life insurance policy of $10,000. Now, again, this play was written in 1959. So what would $10,000 in 1959 mean in 2021? Well, I looked that up, and that would mean about $90,383 to give you a sense of the kind of money that they are talking about over the course of the play. So as I indicated, I thought I would divide the play into two sections, the first being today, and then the second being our next class. So I'm going to ask you to view it from the beginning to about 1 hour and 6 minutes and 20 seconds. That would put you approximately halfway through the play. Do note that the Sidney Poitier version and most of the versions omit various pieces of the play that are important, though not necessarily essential to forwarding plot. We'll talk about some of those pieces as we examine the play itself, but it's a long play, so that's one of the reasons why sometimes pieces such as the Mrs. Johnson piece, the neighbor, is deleted for time and also for economic reasons, not having to hire an actor and an understudy, a costume, wardrobe, things of that nature. So, but nevertheless, again, this would be Lorraine Hansberry's vision of the best way to put her play into film form. And you'll see very quickly that watching a film is very different than watching a stage performance. So they do take advantage of the idea that they can have exteriors. So the link is below. I hope you enjoy A Raisin in the Sun. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. And next class, we will continue on with the second part of A Raisin in the Sun. Take care. Bye-bye.